So today we're coming full screen recorder mode, which for what I want to show you today, I need my laptop for, and the easiest way to do that is to just record the screen. I've been wanting to get into ECU tuning, and the cheapest possible way is that I bought one of those Chinese knockoff ECU readers / writers. And today I'm going to try and show you exactly why that's not going to work. So what got me thinking about it was that I wanted to get in and try and tweak the tune of the CB125F. But the problem is that apparently nobody on the face of this planet has done it. So there is no definition files out there which will interpret the code from the ECU. But that also means is that there's no no protocol that's been released to actually communicate with that bike. Now, there is Grom tuning, and they're very similar engines, being that they're Honda 125 air-cooled 5-speed manuals. Aside from being completely different platforms, the ECUs are not the same. So basically what I'm going to do today is I'm going to plug in my knockoff ECU writer, and I'm going to walk you through what I found to try and make it work. And I haven't even plugged it in yet because I already know it's not going to work. But aside from that, I've been waiting for a day that hasn't been raining because I've got to have my laptop outside, and the bike is currently sitting on a battery charger to just make sure that it stays above 12 volts. What I did want to show you is I've got this Tuner Pro software, and I got a hold of the Grom tuning files. All right, so basically, I would imagine that the tuning looks very similar between the Grom and the CB125 because, like I say, they're very, very similar. But we don't actually have a fuel map. What we have is a throttle position sensor versus RPM. And what I wanted to show you was that presumably my mouse cursor's visible, but you can actually see this is RPM, which somebody suggested that these bikes only rev up to 4,000, but according to the map, 9,250 RPM. The performance of the Grom and the CB seem to be pretty much identical, but what you can see here is that these values actually drop off. So this is RPM, this is throttle position sensor up here. So as the RPM climbs to about here, this is that 4,000 RPM sort of limit. The numbers actually follow my cursor down. They seem to drop off quite significantly. You know, from I'm still learning this sort of stuff, but to me it doesn't seem like the throttle position sensor should be reading smaller values as the RPM go up. And as you are riding, you will notice that the bike loses its torque after about 70 k's an hour. And this would be why, because it's actually programmed to back off the throttle at higher RPM. And I think this is just an economy thing, an emissions thing. So what I wanted to do from about 1800 is I wanted to scale these up by, say, 1.5%, like that, and then just come across diagonally and keep scaling that up across the entire range. And I would hope that by doing that would have a similar effect to changing the fuel map, or at least giving that bike that little bit more oomph at the top end, which is where it's really lacking. So excuse me while I try and quit. I can't because my camera's in the way. Now, obviously, I don't want to save this file because it's an original file. Now, I pulled that file from Honda ECU, but that's not compatible with the device I have. So MCU Innovations has the most complete list of Honda bikes to tune, and they recommend hardware to use with this software, but it is a subscription source. It's going to cost me, well, it's $150, but I think that's in US dollars. But I don't have the hardware they recommend, which is even more, an even bigger expense than what I have, and I'm basically out of money. But Honda ECU does not have a definition file for a CB125. Apparently, they have almost every other bike under the sun, including the 125 scooters. But right now, definition files are the least of my problem because I cannot, or I expect not to be able to read the, I expect not to be able to read the ECU from the bike in the first place. What I did, and I'll flash these pictures up on screen, is I plugged in my OBD2 scanner. So all Euro 5 compliant bikes are OBD2 compliant, so you should be able to read and write them using this method. So I plugged in the scanner and I was able to read the protocol, which is KWP, or Keyword Protocol, or ISO 14230-4, which means nothing to me. But I got to thinking, is in my software, I have to choose a protocol, and the way that the software manages that is having a list of compatible vehicles. Obviously, the Honda's not on there. I'm hoping that by matching the protocol of my bike to another vehicle running the same protocol, I might be able to get them to communicate. But I don't think that's how it works, because if it was that easy, they would just have the list of 5 OBD2 protocols and you'll just pick the list instead of having to pick individual vehicles, makes, models, and years, which it's insanely confusing, especially for somebody like me who does not know what they're talking about. So what I have here, this is the support list of, this is just cars, not bikes, but down here we see the protocol list. Now, KWP is the keyword protocol, so I need to, basically all I'm going to try is say match, I'm going to pick a vehicle that's compatible with the software that's also running the KWP protocol, and hope that I can get the ECU to talk going that way. Most Hondas, from my research, run a K-Hine ECU, not the CB. It runs a Kona, which does not exist on any lists. I do not understand what that ECU is, and all I was able to find was the protocol it runs on. It seems to be very generic, so I'm not holding out much hope. But basically, all that's left for me to do is, we'll unplug all this and I'll take you with me. I'm going to take the laptop outside. We're going to grab my box of tricks. What I'm hoping to do here, let's just shut this down because I forgot that I was still screen recording. Boop. Okay. So, The Honda CB125F is a Euro 5 compliant bike, which means, can you even see what I'm doing down here? Nope. It has a Euro 5 plug. Now, I've done close-ups of this in other videos, so if you missed it, too bad. Where I expect the magic to happen is with this Euro 5 data cable, which I ordered off OBD2 Australia. Basically, I'm going to connect my device, run the software, basically just see how we go. All right, the bike says the battery's full. So here is my generic device, and full disclaimer, this is the first time I've tried connecting it to the bike. So I literally don't know what is going to happen. Probably put the battery charger down there. Okay, make sure there's a nice firm connection there to the bike. I don't want to lose that, so that can go in my pocket. Okay, so that's all connected. Now, all that I need to do is plug the USB from the scanner into the bike. Into the computer. Right. Now we've flashed on, excuse me, we have power to the device. All right, so my software is as bootleg as... Now, it does say in the older versions that you should not connect this software to the internet, but the version I bought claims to be internet compatible, which for the purpose of this video, I'm just going to leave the internet connected, because if it bricks this device, I'm saving myself from a headache, basically. I'm not worried about the device at all. I didn't spend a lot of money on it. So we're waiting for it to load up. Okay, so normally you would pick your vehicle from this list, but there's no Honda. There's KTM, but there's no 390 Duke. However, all these ECUs are these Keihin, which is what Honda's supposed to run. So I know for a fact that this ECU is not a Keihin, but the software is supposed to tell me whether or not the protocol is compatible. So the first thing to do is try and ID the ECU. Switch on the dashboard, check connections, and press OK to continue. So let me just pop that down. Okay, so connections are secure. Okay. So our data light is flashing, so it's trying to communicate. Now, if this ends up taking a long time, obviously I'll just speed it up in post-editing. Okay, I'm not going to bother clipping this in again because I feel like I'm just going to be up and down constantly. Wake up error. And I do believe that's just because, like I said, there is no way to get this device to communicate with the bike. So let's back out of that. We don't have the K tag, so that's irrelevant anyway, but this is normally where you would find your bikes, but the Honda is not compatible with this software. So as I was saying earlier, back out of this, go into car. Now, this is the model that runs the keyword protocol, which is why I'm hoping I can get it to communicate with the ECU. I'm already going to tell you it's not going to work because it's not that simple. So again, we'll go and try an ID. Yes, we are connected to a battery charger. Switch on the dashboard. Yep, I'll go do that. Dash is on, or, whatever. At least it's reading the battery level correctly. So data light is flashing. Switch off the dashboard to continue. Wake up error. And again, this is because there is no way to get this device to communicate with this ECU without the correct protocol in the software. And that is why that these legitimate tuning companies, forget the Chinese knockoffs, have a compatible vehicle list. And if your vehicle is not on that list, you have no hope of getting, you can't just plug it in and expect it to work. It's just not going to communicate. More so for the fact that the ECU on the CB125 is completely random. Now, theoretically, you could plug in a standalone ECU, but that costs the entire value of the bike over again. These legitimate standalone ECUs cost $3,000 on average. And it is not worth spending $3,000 to get maybe an extra 5 or 10 kilometers top speed out of a 125. You could spend that money on a faster bike to begin with, which is why I have, let me unclip that, hiding back there is the Duke. When I'm in the mood for going a little bit faster, I'll just get on the Duke. So we're going to chalk this up to a don't do what Nick does. If you're thinking that you're going to be able to buy one of these knockoff ECU riders and just get it to work, it's not going to. But hopefully by showing you that it's not going to work, you can't just plug it in and expect it to communicate, hopefully I'll save you some money. I've spent the money so you don't have to. Failing that, okay, I'm just going to click out of this, boop, back out of this before I do some serious damage. Incidentally, the legitimate tuning software, by the time you've bought all the hardware and the subscriptions, you're spending $2,000 to $3,000 anyway. So, I guess that's why they sell these knockoff ones, but save your money. It's not worth the headache. So, what I want to do now, I can plug this back in, I guess. I don't know where my plug went. Doesn't matter. We'll just tuck you in there. So MCU Innovations is where I downloaded Honda Tuner from. This is probably going to be my next step, but I don't have the money for the hardware they recommend. But if I have any chance of communicating with this ECU, it's going to be through Honda Tuner. Now, $150 for 12 months. Model contains CB. Let's clear that field. So there are a lot of Honda models that Honda tuner will communicate with. You got a CB1000R? Go for it. CB150R? Go for it. I'm pretty sure even the CBR125R is on this list, but not the CB125F, unfortunately. But basically, if you go through this list and you find your bike, you have a reasonable expectation that it's going to work. But what you need, you've got a list here of Honda, Yamaha, KTM, and recovery software. But most importantly, the hardware. So this SM2 Pro J2534 VCI is what I would need to make the magic happen. But that's not money I'm willing to spend for the time being. That's the cable that I'm using. Next time I'm willing to spend some money, this product over here is what I would have to spend. $80 for the hardware plus $150 for the software license for something that probably won't work. I'm sure you can understand why I'm hesitant to spend that kind of money. So I'm going to go ahead and unplug all this before I actually break something. And yeah. First things first, let us unplug the ECU, unplug the device. So I bought this thing basically knowing that it wasn't going to work, but there's not many videos out there showing failures, showing you why it doesn't work. I'm going to say it again. You have got to check the vehicle compatibility list. And if the device and its associated software doesn't list your vehicle, it's not going to work. You can't trick it. And if you do try to write, I couldn't, for example, load up that GROM ECU file onto this device and try and write it because it would instantly brick. It would destroy my ECU, which is why I didn't try to do anything other than identify the ECU. Obviously, if I tried to read or write something, it would have just gone, computer says no.
Computer says no.
I like my Honda. I genuinely don't want to break it. But this was a fun little experiment. And like I say, I hope that by watching this, you understand a little bit more as to why it won't work if your vehicle isn't compatible. And I'll be honest, I'm not sure that I would trust this bootleg device even if the vehicle was compatible. Because just to get things to work, you've got to use 3 or 4 different programs, which I have Tuner Pro, I have ECU Cal, I have Tuner Pro RT, I have Honda Art ECU. And so even if I could get the file and modify it, none of these programs run an effective checksum correction, which the software this device comes with apparently does a checksum correction. But do you know what? The bootleg software is outdated software. it's non-supported, and the actual software that this is supposed to run on, you're supposed to be able to have, contact support and have them basically help you to communicate with the bike. But I'm not spending $3,000. I would buy a new bike for that just to go faster. So I'm going to end this there. I'm going to pack everything up, and we're going to forget that this even exists, because it's dangerous getting into stuff you don't understand. Right, lose the webcam. We're back on the phone now. Just to reassure you that the bike is fine. I didn't actually blow anything up. But if you're interested, we've now done just over 12,000 kilometers on the trusty Honda.